Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you the Arcane Spellsword Knight. This is a sorcerer character, but before we get started, disclaimer, this is a roleplay, casual play build. It is not meant for meta play. Now that that's out of the way, the Arcane Spellswords are knights of the Mages Guild, kind of more of the magic type, and they do use both stamina and magicka kind of in coalition with each other, so that way they can take advantage of both the magic and stamina that they have, or the physical, martial, and magic. Alright, and that's kind of just the story behind him. It's nothing really big, but I thought it fit. So let's go ahead and get into the character design. This is an Arcane Spellsword Knight. It is a sorcerer. We are an Argonian with this. You can be any race with this. I'm going to let you know that now. Some of this more stamina-focused race are going to focus better into stamina damage. More of the magicka-based races will focus more into the spell damage. As you can see, with the Argonian in its primary role, which is damage dealer, it has 54 points in the stamina, 10 into magicka. Now, like I said, this thing can play other roles. It can also play, just because its primary role is damage dealer, it can play tank and healer. And in order to play tank, you're going to take your stamina and magic points out, and you're going to put in enough into here to get you to about 30k health, and then you're going to put the rest into stamina, depending on what race you are. Now, if you are a magicka-based race, you're going to put a lot into the stamina to kind of compensate for the loss of stamina that you have for not having that in your race. If you're a stamina race, you're going to put into stamina anyways to basically give you more of that for when you're tanking. Now, when you're playing this as a support character healer, you're going to take everything out of stamina and magicka, or you're going to take everything pretty much out everywhere and put everything into magicka. This way you can focus on that high support healing and magicka pool. Alright, let's go ahead and go over the stats. So we do have our max magicka at 21,000, almost 22. We have 22k max health, 30k stamina. We do have a 974 mag recovery with the 1415 stam recovery. Our spell damage is coming in at 1805. Our weapon damage is coming in at 2627. And our spell crit is 35%. Weapon crit is 41%. We are using the Thief Mundus Stone with this. We have 18k spell resist with the 17, almost 18k physical resist. Going on down here, like I said, we are using the Thief Mundus Stone because we are primarily a damage dealer. Now, if you are going to play this as a tank, it's better to go with the Lady Mundus Stone. And if you're going to play this as a healer, go with the Atronach Mundus Stone. Alright, we do have Minor Berserk at all times because of our monster set, and we do have Tri-Stat Food as our primary source of food. Moving on to the gear and stuff. Potions, we do use Tripots for when we're playing tank. We use the Spell Power Pots for when we're being a healer, and we use the Stamina Power Pots for when we're doing damage. The reason why we use this combination is so that this way we can take full advantage of being a spell sword. Alright, now we're going to go over our equipment, starting with our monster set. Our monster set is Slime Craw. Now, Slime Craw is a really interesting set for this because it does give the one-piece spell crit and weapon crit, so that's really nice. And then the fact that you gain Minor Berserk at all times, increasing your damage done by 8%. This allows you to maximize both your spell and physical damage output with that Minor Berserk and that spell crit and weapon crit. We do have this in medium with a tri-stat. The reason we're using medium is because this will give us the maximum amount of resistances we can get on our character. If we use this in a helm. If you use this on the glove, you don't get as much in resistances by having a heavy helm here, because a heavy helm only gives you about 300 difference, and when you look at this now, you have 18 here, and then you have 18 or 13 here. with the heavy gloves. So you get a little bit more out of it this way. We are using Invigorating because in heavy armor it's really hard to sustain with recovery rates because they don't have it built into the armor type. The best way to sustain in heavy armor is by taking damage and doing heavy attacks. This way you can get a little bit more extra out of the heavy armor by using the Invigorating trait. Moving on to the shoulders, we are using Divines with max stamina. This is primarily a stamina-based character. We still use Magicka in some of our abilities, but not 100%. We use Magicka for other things, and I'll show you guys that when we get to the skills. So we are using Divines here to increase our Mundus Stone capabilities, and we are wearing 4 pieces of Divines, just to let you know. And it is the smaller pieces, and all the smaller pieces are max stamina enchants. This is so we can maximize our character's max stam, but also maximize our Mundus Stone use. So, the gloves, again, Divines, max stamina. On the chest, we are wearing heavy, but we are using Hunting's Rage with this. Now, the reason for the Hunting's Rage on the body is so we can maximize our physical damage output. This gives us weapon crit, it gives us max stamina, it gives us weapon crit on the 2, 3, and 4 piece, and the 5 piece adds weapon damage, a lot of weapon damage. So we can maximize our damage potential through physical damage with this set. And we do use a tri-stat here in Reinforced on heavy armor. The reason why we make the chest heavy and reinforced is because this way we get the maximum resistance value. Now, I already went over the glove, and I'm going to go over the belt and boots really quick as well. And the tri-stats, by the way, are just so we can hybridize into the different roles: tank, healer, damage dealer. So, and it allows us kind of a mix of play also. So I want to go over this real quick. So the reason we use tri-stats in the helm, chest, and legs is because this way we can take advantage of those 3 stat pools no matter what role we're playing. Even if I'm playing a healer, I can still use stamina for blocking, dodge rolling, breaking free, and all that. If I'm playing a tank, I can take advantage of the higher stam pool and the higher Magicka pool, so I can mix my resources there so I can tank more effectively. When I'm playing a damage dealer, I can take advantage of that higher stamina pool, but also take advantage of that little bit higher Magicka pool so I can get greater results out of my damage with it. Alright, now, moving on to the belt. We are using a light belt here. This is to maximize our resistances. It is Divines with a max stamina enchant. Now, light on the belt is basically because belts are your weakest armor providing piece. So using a light belt allows you to sacrifice that resistance that you would get normally by using a light belt, or by using a belt, you know, of different types. But using a light belt here allows you to sacrifice that much because you are using a reinforced chest. And this basically compensates for you not having the high resistance in the belt. That's why we do reinforced here. And then the reason we do the light belt here is because when you have a light belt, you are wearing 1 piece of light armor. We're wearing 1 piece of medium. And we're wearing 5 pieces of heavy. This allows us to get the Undaunted passives. But on top of that, we also get to take advantage of the light armor passives that we use, and the medium armor passives. Onto the boots, we are using Divines max stamina. Like I said, the smaller pieces are all going to be Divines max stamina. This way you can maximize your stamina resource pool, so you can maximize your damage output with stamina-based attacks. And then onto the Magicka side, we use the tri-stats with the body, and on the legs we do use Invigorating as well, so we can get that higher recovery rate. So we get a plus 22 recovery in Magicka health and stamina. This allows us to take advantage of that little bit of extra, and then the recovery rate bonuses we get elsewhere to maximize our potential. Alright, moving on to the jewelry. We are using 2 Tri-Rune Amber Plasm rings. This is our third set, is Amber Plasm. And the reason we use Amber Plasm is because it adds max magicka to our pool. It adds 3-piece spell critical, 4-piece spell damage, and then on the 5-piece it gives us mag recovery and stam recovery. So we can take advantage of both magicka and stamina and be really effective with it. Now this is the first time I've ever put Amber Plasm into a build because, no offense, being told for 4 years that this is primarily used for for however long Amber Plasm has been in the game, since the Shadows of the Hist DLC, being told that this is primarily a PvP set, and then trying it in PvE and figuring out, wow, this stuff is really good for a hybrid type character. This is amazing. I like it. So that's why we're using this set, is because it makes this character be very hybridish. Because it gives us that magicka recovery, that stam recovery, and then it gives us 2 things of crit, and then it gives us that higher max magicka. Now, if you notice, we're not using a proc set with this one. We're actually using things that give us a greater advantage in not only our stamina damage, but also our spell damage, and then our recovery rate. So this allows us to be more effective overall. So it's really kind of a nice setup here. And we do use 2 Tri-Rune Rings here, and this is, again, so we can hybridize. And we do have 2 weapon damage enchants. Now, our weapon damage is going to be a lot higher than our spell damage, but that's okay because we want to maximize our weapon damage. We focus on weapon damage mostly. We use spell damage for damage over time, and I'll show you guys what I mean by that. Moving on to the necklace, we are using an infused stam recovery. Now, you can use an infused mag recovery here if you want, but I don't really think you need it too much because you're not so focused on magicka unless you're playing a healer type. And even if you're playing a healer type, having that good stam recovery is going to allow you to maximize your capability of getting resources back from blocking, dodge rolling, breaking free, and stuff like that. Alright, now moving on to the weapons. We are using dual Amber Plasm swords on the front bar, 1 sharpened with a mag recovery, magic absorption, and this will do magic damage and it'll return so much magicka back to you. It is sharpened, so it does give you the increased physical and spell penetration. So it does increase your damage capabilities on the front bar. The next weapon we're using is a Nirnhound, which increases your weapon's overall damage for both spell and physical damage. And on top of that, you have an absorbed stamina here. Now, somebody will try and tell me that you can't use an absorbed stamina and absorbed magicka together. You can't use 2 absorbed magickas or absorbed staminas or absorbed health together, but you can use an absorbed health and magicka or an absorbed stamina and magicka. So you can use that combination, and it works. And this is cool because this allows you to weave your light attacks, and it gives you resources back constantly, both in magicka and stamina, while you're weaving light attacks. Moving on to the back bar, we are using a greatsword infused with a weapon and spell damage enchant. This is going to maximize our spell and weapon damage with the infused trait because it increases your weapon's enchantment effect by 30% and reduces the enchantment cooldown by 50%. This is usually every 5 seconds. It actually drops to every 3 seconds, I think it is. So you can actually reapply this every 3 seconds instead of 5 seconds. So when you're using the ability you use to apply this, which is Carve, it lasts for 10 seconds. So it'll actually reapply it 3 times. So it stays up for a longer effect. Sorry. Alright, now that I've shown you guys that, let's go over the skills, starting with class skills. Now, this is something that is very important to understand. There is a reason why I learn all the ultimates and active abilities and passives for all 3 skill lines. This is so I can play any role effectively, regardless of what situation I might be in. Tank, healer, damage dealer, in PvE, PvP, dungeons, trials, overland, doesn't matter. Battlegrounds, I have all the tools necessary to play in any environment. And that's why I learned all the different class skills and passives. I also like to take advantage of the passives for when I'm playing my character in different situations. Now, moving on to weapon skills. we primarily use two-handed and dual wield. Dual wield is on the main bar, and two-handed is on the back bar. So we take all the ultimate and all the active abilities, plus passes, because you never know. You might switch two-handed, to dual two-handed or dual wield. But take the active, passives, and ultimate abilities. Same thing with dual wield. We take the passive abilities, active abilities, and ultimate, so we can take advantage of the character in many different situations. Moving on to weapon skills. Or armor skills, sorry. Light armor, we take the top 3 so we can take advantage of this on the one piece of light armor we have, because Evocation is going to give you mag recovery and it's going to give you reduced magicka cost. This is going to give you spell warding, which increases your spell resistance, and Grace gives you reduced effectiveness of snares applied to you and reduces the cost of sprint by 3%, just for wearing one piece. So we take advantage of these small benefits to maximize our character's potential. The same thing goes with the medium armor passives. We take Dexterity to increase our weapon critical. We take the Windwalker to give us 4% stamina recovery and 2% reduced cost in stamina abilities. And then we take Athletics because it increases the movement speed of sprint for each piece of medium armor, which is 3%, and it reduces our dodge roll cost by 4% for each piece of medium armor. When you look at the CP, we have 16% in CP for dodge roll reduction. This makes it 20%. So it saves us resources and it gives us a higher crit chance, it gives us better recovery rates, all that stuff. It's very small, but it adds very well into the other benefits we have. Heavy armor, we do take advantage of all the passives. This is because being a primary heavy armor user, you want to take advantage of that passive capability that it gives you. Like Resolve will give you higher resistances. Your Constitution gives you more resources back when you get hit by damage every 4 seconds. And it does give you health recovery, so if you are playing a more health recovery build, you can take advantage of that. Juggernaut gives you increased max health for each piece of heavy armor. This gives us 10% more health. This makes us more survivable. We also get Revitalize, where it increases our mag and stamina return of our heavy attacks by 25%. And then we get Rapid Mending, which increases our healing received by 8%. This makes us very survivable. World Skills, Soul Magic. Take advantage of the ultimate active abilities and passives. You can be a vampire with this. Or werewolf, either one. I will warn you though, you are going to be sacrificing some stuff to take those, and sometimes it's not good. Depending on what race you are, can play really well into those. Now moving on to the Fighter's Guild, we do take the ultimate, active abilities, and passives here for different situations, because you never know when you might want to use some of these passives in different roles, in different things, like dungeons, battlegrounds, all that stuff. Mage's Guild, we do take advantage of the ultimate active abilities and passives here as well. Psijic Order, we do the same. We do this because we want to make our character have an advantage, high of advantage as possible in any situation, whether we're playing a healer, a tank, or damage dealer. So we want to take advantage of every skill we can get. Undaunted, same thing, we take all the active abilities and passives. Now these are the two most important passives that you can get in the game, because one gives you resources back whenever you activate a synergy, and this is going to help you sustain better when you're in dungeons or trials. Undaunted Metal is going to give you an increase of max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% for each type of armor worn, so heavy, light, and medium. And that you have equipped. It's going to give you a 6% increase in your stats. This is why we wear 1 medium, 1 light, and 5 heavy with this build. Or any of our other builds, we'll wear 1 heavy, 1 medium, and then 5 light. Or we wear 1 heavy, 1 light, and 5 medium. So we can take advantage of this passive. And then we can also take advantage of the armor passives to give us those other advantages in our character in different situations. Alliance War, we take the skills. I take the skills that best reflect my ability to play PvE. Rapid Maneuvers and Magic Detonation are more PvP-based skills, and so are the passives in this line. That's why I don't take them. I take the 2 skills or active abilities and ultimate that I can use in PvE. The same thing I do with support. I take the active abilities, the ultimate, and the passives that best reflect my ability in PvE. Now, if I want to play more PvP focused, I can take the active abilities and the rest of the passives in both sides, so I can take advantage of those in that environment. Racials. So always unlock your racial passives. With this, we are an Argonian, so we get Life Mender. We get increased healing done by 6%. You guys will see why this comes in so handy. Argonian resistance, increase your max health by 1,000 and your disease resistance by 2310. Also gain immunity to disease status effect. This can really help out in PvP. And then we also have Resourceful, which increases our max magicka by 1,000. And then when you drink a potion, restore 4,000 health, magic, and stamina. This is your resource management of the race. So the race's resource management itself is whenever you drink a potion. So you got to remember, if I'm using a spell power pot, stamina power pot, or even a tripod, I can actually get all 3 resources back, plus other resources. Makes it really easy to sustain. Moving on to crafting. Alchemy. Medicinal use is really good. When using a potion, resulting effects last 30% longer. And then provisioning, gourmand, and connoisseur. These will make your food and drink last 20 minutes longer. Right. Now we're going to go over the skills on the bars, starting with the first ability. We have Bloodcrazed. Now, Bloodcrazed does damage up front, it does damage over 10 seconds, and while it's doing the damage, you also heal for X amount of health every 2 seconds. So, for the duration. So, every 2 seconds for the 10 seconds, you're going to get healed. So, 5 times you're going to get healed with this. This is one of the ways we sustain our survivability. Our next ability is Rapid Strikes. Now, this ability is made to do damage. This is our primary spammable. It does damage over 5 consecutive hits, and it does X amount of damage with each hit, and each hit is increased in subsequent damage by 3%. The final hit does 300% more damage. So this is made primarily for damage dealing, where this is made for damage and support. So we're using those in combination with each other to give us that greater capability to stay alive. The next ability we use is called Deadly Cloak. Now this one, you envelop yourself in a protective cloak of razors, gaining major evasion for 15 seconds, reducing damage taken from area attacks by 25%. Every 3 seconds, the shrapnel will pulse out, dealing X amount of physical damage to all enemies within 5 meters. Now remember, this lasts 15 seconds. It happens every 3 seconds, so it will pulse 5 times. It's pretty nice. The next ability we have is an Execute, and this is Mage's Wrath. Now this thing, you call down a lightning bolt that deals X amount of shock damage. Now if the enemy falls below 20% health within 4 seconds of being struck, an explosion deals additional damage to that target and additional damage to targets around them. This is a very powerful ability because it does a high amount of damage on the hit. So, especially when you're in Execute. Next ability we have is called Bound Armaments. Now we have this here because it increases our max stamina by 8% and our light attack damage by 11%. We do a lot of weaving with this character, light attack weaves, so we actually get to boost that light attack damage even more, but we also get to boost our max stamina pool. This is how we can mix and match our resources. Moving on to the next ability. We do use Flawless Dawnbreaker for the increased weapon damage while slotted by 5%, but it does do a decent amount of damage on the initial hit to multiple targets, and it does damage in front of it that way in a cone in 10 meters, so it will hit all the targets in that 10-meter cone, but it also does damage over 6 seconds along with that high damage output. So it's a very effective skill for dropping trash in dungeon and in trials. Moving on to the back bar, this is where things are going to get interesting. People are going to question this, but I do want to point this out. The first ability we have is Lightning Flood. This is an AoE damage ability. It does damage over time. It does shock damage to all enemies in the area every second for 8 seconds. An ally standing within the Nexus can activate the Conduit Synergy, dealing X amount of damage to enemies around them. So it's a damage over time ability and synergy. On the next ability, we do use Carve. Now this is how we keep our procking of our weapon enchant. is with this ability. This will do physical damage up front, and it does physical damage over 10 seconds. Because it lasts 10 seconds, we get 10 seconds of our higher weapon and spell damage proccing. The next ability we use is called Power Surge. This increases or gives you both major brutality and major sorcery, increasing weapon and spell damage by 20% for 33 seconds. This is how we play with both resources, physical and spell damage. We build up as much as we can in our physical and spell damage so we can maximize our damage potential with those things. And then while active, dealing critical hits or strikes heals you for X amount of health every second for the 33 seconds. It's really hard for you to die. And the other reason why it's really hard for you to die is Hurricane. Hurricane does basically a whirlwind around you of debris and air and everything, and it does physical damage every second for 15 seconds. The wind grows in damage and size, increasing up to 150% more damage and up to 9 meters in size. While in this form, you gain Major Resolve, Major Ward, and Minor Expedition, increasing your physical spell resistance by 5,280 and your movement speed by 10%. This allows you greater agility in combat, like movement in combat, but it also allows you to be able to get to those enemies so you can start critically hitting them, so your Power Surge keeps you alive. We also have Bound Armaments here for the max stamina. You can also activate the ability which will create a Oblivion Suit of Daedric Mail that increases your block mitigation by 36% for 3 seconds. But we mainly use it for the while slotted max stamina is increased by 8%, and the light attack damage we do is increased by 11%. I use this when I'm tanking. Also, moving on to the last ability we have is Greater Storm Atronach. Now this thing is really nice. It will summon a Storm Atronach that doesn't move. It lands and does shock damage and stuns enemies for 3 seconds. And then also it starts zapping enemies with shock damage every second for the duration, which is 28 seconds. And then and nearby ally can activate the Charged Lightning synergy, granting the ally and the Atronach Major Berserk, increasing their damage done by 25% for 8 seconds. It's a really nice synergy, and it's a very powerful ability. This is the one we're going to use most of the time. Our Dawnbreaker we mainly have here for the 5% weapon damage. We have this here to boost our overall damage. So this is what we primarily use. Alright, now that I've gone over the skills and stuff, we're going to go over CP really quick, starting with the red tree. We have 56 in Ironclad, reducing your damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 18 in the Spell Shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1729. We have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 into Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical, poison, disease damage by 10%. 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing your damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And then 20 into Heavy Armor Focus, increasing your physical resistance by 1900 while wearing 5 or more pieces of heavy armor. Now, I'm going to get asked this again. I'm gonna let you guys know. The reason I use these 3 here, or these 2 actually, even though I might not have a shield equipped, this shield is any damage shield that gets applied to you. So even if it's a healer that applies it, or a DK, or anyone that has a shield that applies to multiple members, it boosts that shield by 5%, or by 16%. So you get more shield strength out of any shield. So even if it's one you cast or somebody else casts, that's why we use this. The Quick Recovery is basically to boost your healing received. The more healing you receive, the more effective heals apply to you. That's why. Alright, now moving on to the green tree, we have 40 into Warlord. This reduces break free cost by 16%. 18 into Sprinter, reducing sprint cost by 11%. 18 into Bashing Focus, reducing bash cost by 11%. You guys are probably seeing a new thing here. It should be 12%. I don't know why. it was that way. So let me go ahead and fix this. You want 19 into each of these, so that you get 12% sprint cost reduction and bashing cost reduction. Now moving on to the middle tree, this is where everything gets more interesting. We have 43 in the Mooncalf. This increases stamina recovery by 10%. 43 in the Arcanus, increasing mag recovery by 10%, and 43 in the Tenacity, increasing your magic and stamina return and fully charged heavy attacks by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 23 in the Tumbling. This reduces your dodge roll cost by 10%. Now, I know I said you get 16 if you have 40 into this. But because the way we do this, we actually can't do that much. So we do this. So it's going to give us 14% reduced dodge roll cost. Now, we do have 40 into Shadow Ward, which reduces our block cost by 16%. And then moving on to the blue tree, we hybridize here. So we go 43 into Blessed, increasing your healing done by 10%. 23 into Elfborn, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 10%. 43 into Elemental Expert, increasing your Flame, Frost, Shock, and magic damage done by 10%. We also get 5% more shock damage. So this is going to be affected by that. So we get 15% shock damage. Moving on over here, we have 35 in the Physical Weapon Expert. This increases your light and heavy attack damage done with two-handed, one-handed, and shield, dual-wield bow weapons, and werewolf form by 20%. We have 40 in the Mastered Arms. This increases damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. This also allows us to unlock Retaliation, Reposit, and Butcher. So if we block an attack, we have a chance of redirecting damage back to the enemy. We also, anytime we block a heavy attack, our next light attack deals 30% more damage. And then Butcher, every time the enemy drops below 25% health, our light and heavy attacks do 5% more damage. When you add in the fact that we get 11% more light attack damage, that's 31% with this. Add 16. Then you add this 30. Then you add this 5. It's crazy how much damage you can do with a light attack. Moving on, we have 43 in the Mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage by 10%. We do have 23 in the Precise Strikes. This increases critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And then 20 into Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. So that's what a hybrid setup looks like. Now, I am going to do a quick parse with this on the target dummy, the small target dummy and the big target dummy, so you guys can see what this thing looks like in action when it comes to damage. So we are going to go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and pop my potion. I'm going to pop my hurricane, and then I'm going to use my liquid lightning, carve. Now remember, my execute goes in when the enemy drops below 20% health. But you want to wait until you get them a little bit lower. Now I can usually pull about 20k DPS with this guy. But because I was doing a bad rotation, it's going to show a lot lower. Because I don't know this character very well. I do, but I don't. I've played it a little bit and messed around with it, but I'm not very effective with it because I'm used to using a bow. And I thought I would try something different with this character. So now we're going to parse on the big guy here. This big guy is mainly for organized group, mainly for trial play. So you guys can see what this thing would be like in a trial setting if you were going to do a trial on normal or even veteran difficulty. So potion, hurricane, same thing. Liquid lightning. I'm going to get my power surge going so I can get that heals going, plus the higher spell and weapon damage. We're going to drop our Dawnbreaker. I'm just doing the Dawnbreaker so I can show you guys the damage output of this character. And then what I'll do is that way when we get in the dungeon. Now this character can usually pull about 30k DPS with a good rotation. So it's actually kind of nice when you see it actually start doing a decent amount of damage and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the two parses with you guys just to kind of show you. Now I know it looks like the damage sucks on this guy, but trust me, it doesn't. It does do really good damage, and you guys will see why here in a second. Alright. So when we look at this, starting with the the spell damage, you can see we get 3374 spell damage with a 41% spell critical. This is on the big dummy, okay, over here, this guy. So we actually get a lot of spell crit and spell damage with this build. It's just not, we don't have a really large max magicka pool. Now when you look at the smaller one, we get a 2797 spell damage, 21, almost 22k max magicka with a 35% spell crit, 60% critical damage. It's not going to be as effective for spell damage, but it still does a decent amount. Our lightning flood still can hit for about 3-4k on max and about 3k on average, and its DPS per second is roughly about 22. Then when you look at Hurricane, it's doing about 1,000. And you can see here, Absorb Stamina and Absorb Magicka both procced 4 times. And our Mage's Wrath went off 1 time. And it did do really low damage, but that's because it's not super powerful, but it works. You can also use Executioner Strike there or not Executioner Strike. Yeah, you can use Executioner Strike if you have 2-handed on the front bar. So if you're using 2-handed with instead of dual wield. So it's kind of nice. Now, now that I've shown you guys that stuff, we're going to go ahead and take this into a dungeon. Now, I'm not going to worry about changing anything because I can play this character like this in a dungeon on normal, and I don't have to worry about needing a shield. I just don't need it. This thing just does insane amount of damage and has insane survivability. So it just doesn't need a shield when in here rolling around. Now when I do go up against the boss, I might throw a shield on just so I have that extra capability of survivability. And I'll probably put it where my execute thing is. So I'll go ahead and actually we'll just go ahead and do that before we get there. Hardened Ward is a great shield for you. It's a very small shield to some, but I think 11k is more than enough. Alright. So we're going to go in here. We're going to get our Hurricane going. We are going to get our Potion going. Lightning. And my Power Surge didn't go off. The other reason why I like having that Berserk on the monster set is because it does a decent amount of damage. It just improves all your damage, so both spell and physical. That's why I like using that monster set with this, is that minor Berserk really does help with all your overall damage output. Thank you, big guy. Alright, we're going to go ahead and move on into this room. Now, the thing that sucks about Hurricane is you got to cast it a lot to keep it up effectively. Now I'm going to go ahead and let him kill me this time. I'm going to have to let my crit surge and all that run off, but I am going to let him kill me if he can. Usually he can, pretty quickly. Alright, there we go. So that was just to show you like the effectiveness of this thing, and it is really good. It is a really fun build to play. Surprisingly enough, I didn't think it was going to work out at first until I started tinkering with some stuff, and I was like, wow, this is actually really fun. And even being an Argonian, the reason that's so nice with them is they get that 6% healing done. So when they use that power surge, and every time it heals, because of critical damage, it actually heals you for more. Then you're wearing the heavy armor, which gives you 8% healing received plus 5% healing received on top of that. And then you have the 10% healing done plus the 6%. You get really big, powerful heals from being an Argonian. It's pretty crazy. So you can stay pretty much indefinitely alive with this. But that is pretty much it for the Arcane Spellsword Knight character. I hope you guys liked it. If you do, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.